What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwashed to be Broke, in a show where we talk about the different brainwashing stories, patterns, and this type of programming that we've been basically shaped into. And I'm interviewing here amazing people, like one of our guests today, showing you guys what is actually possible when you break the programming and start doing something completely different in with your life and start living your life meaningfully, not just trying to survive or those type of interesting words that people are using when you talk to them. So without further ado, I have a really amazing guest over here. She is in the marketing space and also personal development space. She's writing actually a book when she will the book will be live in 6 months, you say, or something like that, around ish, let's
Crossing.
say. Yeah. So we'll maybe talk about that book also because like I'm really interested in that. But anyway, without further ado, welcome to the show, Christene Marie.
Marie, yes.
Marie,
Adam, thank you
sorry,
for having
Marie.
me. Excited to be sitting here across from you. You know, you've got quite an interesting story yourself, so I'm excited to kind of share the spotlight with you because I would imagine that your listeners deserve to hear a lot more from you because of what you're doing on the background as well. So grateful
Oh,
to share the stage with you.
thank you. That's all. That's really kind of you. Thank you so much. And let's dive right in and let's I want to let our listeners um to let you to share a bit your story, who you are actually, who is Christy, and what is she does, and why is she passionate about what she does.
Mm. Well, Adam, I love the title for this podcast, and I had fun doing a little bit of my own research beforehand, just hearing the transformation, and that's every good story is the before and then the after. And the brainwashed piece, the reprogramming that's necessary for so many of us is to be done with great intention because whether we realize it or not, and I think that this is partially the goal, is just to realize first what is the program by which I'm living my life. And every single one of us has a program, and we inherited it from our parents who inherited it from theirs. We inherited it also from what maybe some of us, like me, growing up sitting in the pews and listening to somebody at the pulpit. That's another way you can inherit a program or a mindset. And you also inherit it simply by what you experience yourself. Let's say your parents lost their house and they went under financially, and you developed a program around finances from that experience. So it's not just what was handed down generationally, what we heard and listened to and was kind of programmed into us in school or in a religious setting, but also our own experiences. And for so long as the past remains unexplored, our subconscious is running these programs completely unbeknownst to us, and we're living according to these old set of data and rules that probably don't apply to our life today. And so this is partially why I'm excited to be seated across from you, because it's very rare to have a podcast solely dedicated to what we've moved from in terms of the brainwashing to a new way of thinking. And so for me, kind of a big brainwash, I guess you could say, was that I should look, sound, feel, mirror everybody around me. And in so doing, I would achieve success. So, growing up in a very Christian conservative environment, that was kind of the status quo. It was like the more you conform, the more success you will have within the confines of these four walls, either the church and also the home. My parents are two of the most wonderful humans you'll ever meet, and they were never encouraged to kind of break the mold. And my dad grew up in a home where it was very traditional in terms of like when you're spoken to, that's when you can speak. So there wasn't a lot of free-minded, open thinking, questioning the rules, whereas my mom was raised in a very even more religious home than I was. And it was very much so like when she was asked a question, her brother actually spoke on her behalf. So it was very much so, it wasn't just like you're a child, don't speak up, but it was like you're a woman. The men will answer for you, and the woman's role is in the home. So there were very gender based, but then also even age based
Mm,
brainwashing, I guess you could say. And
yeah.
brainwashing is very strong. But at the end of the day, it shapes you. You know,
Yeah.
it shapes you where it's I ended up getting married at 20 as a good Christian girl would. And because of that, it was like, oh, this is my role in life to be a wife and then eventually a mother. And that's why I exist in this world is to fulfill on these duties and to exist for the enjoyment and for the sake of everyone else's happiness. And so that was kind of my starting point in life was
Mm,
those mindsets.
wow. So very traditional, when it
Very.
comes to that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's very interesting. Because I was always the different way completely. Like I was like,
Mhm.
before I'm going to start my family, I'm going to provide. I'm gonna be,
Yeah.
able to secure and all of that because like based on how I, you know, been raised and what
Mhm.
environment I grew up in. So for
Yes.
me, it was a little bit like I get what you're saying because I know many people around me at that
Mhm.
time that lived this way or they
Mhm.
living still this way.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I just never get it, but like to how you can even do that, like how you can do that to your child basically, or to your wife to start like to start a family. I'm like starting most of the time I'm talking about family, right? Because like when you
Yeah.
bring it like okay, when you're just a two, you can figure it out because like you still have the other person that is actually like
Mhm.
working or so on and does something on the other side. But when you start bringing in kids or something, that's totally different way, right?
Totally
That's
different.
different, right?
Yes.
The world is now around them most of the time, at least what I saw and how
Mhm.
what I've experienced, even though like um, yeah. So when it comes to that period of time when you've been young, and figuring out all the world basically how it's supposed to be and so on, have you been confused sometimes that like why is this is the way and like why I have to be that way wired, like is it
Mhm.
something that is actually like the right way to go, like if like for a
Right.
woman and so on, like yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think it almost lends to, okay, am I still operating that way? Kind of what happened since then. My former husband, so there's a little bit of a, that I just gave a hint to my story of where I am today. He and so he was 3 years older than me. And I worked when we first got married. So it wasn't like I sat at home and didn't. My mom was 19 when she got married and she had her first child at
I
21.
know, like this is like how the world was, right?
It
Like
was,
my
I know.
parents, I've been born when my parents was 20 and
I know, and that's how it was. It's just crazy. It's like, we're kids. And my parents went on to have 6 kids. So they had 6 children. And so my mom, like full time, that's her full time job is raising
that's
babies. And God
that's
bless her.
amazing.
I know. She's really man. So I really and I'm so close with them today. Like all of us kids, we're all really good friends. And so there's so much kudos to give to
Mm,
them. And there's not a one size fits all. And I think that's probably what been one of the biggest realizations came when so my sister, she was older than me. She was the eldest of all of us.
mhm,
She got married at 21 and she moved to Houston, Texas with her darling, and they got pregnant and they had a baby girl. And 3 weeks after, so I was 21 at the time, she was 26 at the time, and she we got a phone call that her husband had been killed by a drunk driver, and her baby girl was 3 weeks old. And so she packed up. My mom flew down. My brother was living down there as well. And then they moved them back up. And I think, Adam, what tragedy does is that it shakes those systems in us that we don't even know we're adhering to. And one of the systems that I adhered to was effectively, if you do the right thing, you'll have success. If you fit in this mold, everything right will go well for you. And that's how I had been that had been my experience all my 21 years, is that if you fit into the box, if you conform, everything's going to be fine. And so when we had this, I mean, real true tragedy, like you can't ever go back to the way things were. So it does it. It wakes you up in a sense.
Yeah.
To whatever extent you allow yourself to be broken open, you can see the truth of what's inside. And I only allowed myself to be broken open to an extent. I didn't really fully like get really let myself feel the pain during that time. So that's a moment. I'll touch on that in a moment. But man, it's so important for us to recognize these are the systems we've been abiding by. Because here's the thing: was my sister any less of a woman, any less cared for or loved because now she doesn't have a husband? What happens when you've been orienting your whole life towards this is the role I'm supposed to play? And then when that husband, either you can't get married, you can't have kids, those things that you literally cannot control, does that make you less than, less worthy, less loved, less less of a woman? And so it really did kind of bring those very subconscious programs to the surface of, is there still so much purpose in life if I don't have a significant other? Because Adam, so much of, especially Western culture, is geared towards love in the romantic sense. There's 7 different Greek words for love. In the English language, there's 1. In the Greek, there's 7. And so we've kind of compounded it all into this one word, love, when really Eros is the romantic, passionate love. Philos is like brotherly love, and agape is the eternal love. And so there's all these different types of love, but we've romanticized all of them and made Eros be number 1, most important, the romantic kind, when, my gosh, there's so much more to not just love, but also to life. And so kind of taking the fairy tale out of life has been its own necessary deprogramming. But in order for us to create a new program, we need to go to the old program, analyze why is it there in the first place? How is that informing and influencing me today? And now I can start to undo it and then put something new in its place. And the latter part of putting something new in its place is so important, because a lot of times people will just take the baby out with the bathwater. I'm done with that. And frankly, they end up going in a more of a nihilistic direction, because when you remove all of the old programs, you're left with a sense of hopelessness. Well, what's the point? So it's really important to actually add in a new program in its stead, rather than just leaving yourself neutral, because there's no neutral thought. It's either life-giving or taking away from you. So it's really, really critical that in those moments, especially moments of brokenness, when the old programs are in the process of being undone, that we're intentional to put something in its stead.
Yeah. So your sister experienced basically a big shift in her life, basically, because of that
Yeah.
event, right? Have you been affected by that too, or your family? The way, like, how, did it change somehow, like, how you've been operating from that event?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it was so devastating. And so one of the things that I think I didn't let myself feel the gravity of it, because it was my sister's loss. So I
Mhm.
never really let myself grieve the way I needed to. So then, on the heels of not really letting ourselves be, not letting brokenness do its work. And the work of brokenness is to break open. And then you
Mhm.
really do see what's inside, and you get an exposure to the truth that you
Yep.
otherwise may not have access to. And so I kind of ignored it because I didn't, to be honest, I think there was, even in of itself, I had some shame around my own grief. Um,
Mm.
I didn't even realize this until 5 years later, maybe even
Mhm.
6 years after my brother-in-law's death. I remembered I never called my sister that morning, and I was so ashamed of that, that I never called her, because I couldn't do anything about it. And I had placed so much of my worth in what I could do for people. So I didn't think that just being there with someone in their pain made me worthy. And so effectively, I never really let myself totally feel that pain,
Mhm.
because there was shame associated with it. And so 6 years later, when I let myself realize that, it was like that's when I could really break open and see what was going on inside. And to that point, it's like we slowly die, we slowly erode for so long as we're stuffing the pain in. And
Yeah.
so long as it's not coming out of us, it really eats away. It
Yep.
really, really, really does. So I feel like I was kind of slowly dying on the inside those 6 years after the death of my brother-in-law. And then my husband, my former husband, ended up um, just dismantling everything in his life. So he kind of did the thing where he was taking away all the old programs, but not really putting something new in its place. And so he left me as well, and just kind of like left everything. He quit his job. He moved across the country. He left me and was just like, I think he was really doing some soul searching for many reasons. And that, I think that was actually the final straw that really, really broke me open. And then in that process of being broken open, you wake up. You wake up if you allow yourself to. And then you see, oh my gosh, what I saw was that I had been living as a non-person for the majority of my life.
Mhm.
I had been living just in reaction. Who do you want me to be? Who do you want me to be? I'll go be that person. Are you good? And it was so fixated on everybody around me, fitting the mold, yes, but there was a desire for connection and a desire for love, but again, misunderstood love, which is if I conform, then I will be loved, rather than I'm loved intrinsically for who I am. And I think, Adam, somebody asked me the other day, if there was, what's the most important thing, if people could believe one thing. And it's like, man, I really think that if everybody believed in their core that they're loved, now they're free to go pursue their passion and go pursue their mission. And they're no longer living at the behest of, am I ever going to be enough to be loved? Now, finally, go do the thing you were created to do in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see this very, very often when it comes to, just seeing other people, even like who are not really like in business, or they're not trying to pursue any type of change in their life. When something like that happen, like some breakup, like some very emotional event that literally, like, I don't know if they tear them apart, but like it's like something really, really strong that from then they completely, like, it seems like they something I cannot even express it properly, but like something happened that they changed the way of their life, the trajectory of their life completely. Like,
Yes.
and like what I want to say is that, like, in my opinion, business is not for everybody, right?
Yeah, true.
But it's very interesting that most of the people jumping into businesses or realizing certain things, or changing the way they've been living when something like that happened. And most of the time they are jumping into entrepreneurship and building something meaningful, changing the world, changing the way they've been living, helping other people. Do you know why is that actually happening? What is the reason? Is that the events itself, like that, like make them feel like that they have to figure something out, or like that is? I don't. I'm trying to understand. Just like, what is your
Yes.
opinion on that?
That's such a good question. It reminds me of a book by David Brooks called The Second Mountain. So there's two angles here that I think is really important, and such a good question, Adam, because one perspective is akin to this book, The Second Mountain, which is when people have summited the first mountain, which is effectively the mountain of self, their own self-interest, their life is oriented towards and about them. And then they get to the peak and it's like, really, this is it? And you actually see a lot of celebrities, Hollywood actresses saying, I earned all the money, I earned all the fame, and it was so empty. And so then effectively you then have a choice. Am I going to just continue to kind of self-serve and see maybe if I can find some meaning here? Or am I going to summit the second mountain? And the second mountain is that of community. And it's like doing things for the sake of the good of the whole and the collective, rather than just the good of the self. There's so much meaning in that. So effectively, it's the decision to move from the first mountain to the second mountain. But usually it's only after the cresting of the first mountain and summiting thereof that they realize, oh, this isn't it. And then the other angle, the other perspective is kind of like, I almost feel like I grew up on the second mountain. I grew up operating where my worth was based in, okay, what can I do for other people? And I think that is actually just as dangerous as summiting living solo on the first mountain. And so what I needed to do was I actually needed to go back to the first mountain and be like, who am I? What am I
Mm-hmm.
called to do? Who did God make me uniquely to be versus me just being the sum total of everyone else's opinion of me?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to kind of go back and do a strange order of things because I think both mountains are important. We need to know who we are, and then we need to understand how am I called to exist in the collective, But here's the ultimate thing. What's your powering reason for why you're on either mountain? And I think
Mm-hmm.
the why is here where it's so important for us to consider. Because if we're being motivated by fear of not belonging, fear of not being enough, fear of being found out, there's a lot of people that are afraid of that. I think all of us have to some extent the fear of, but what if I'm really not, like, what if I'm actually really not enough? What if I'm really not that good? And that usually that fear prevents trying and it prevents failing forward. And so again, having that baseline foundation of love allows for us to then try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, have some wins, keep going, try, fail, try, fail. And that confidence that comes from that place, so often it comes from people who either grew up in a very strong foundation of feeling like they are loved,
Mm-hmm.
or it's from people who grew up with none of that and they had to discover for themselves and choose, you know what, screw you all. Like I'm good. And after you make that decision of I'm good, I believe that I'm enough. And for me it was I believe I am loved and enough because of who God says that I am, who is the highest authority in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Then I move from there to
Yep.
love fully, but it's coming from a place of already enough. It's not coming from a place of lack, it's coming from a place of abundance. Now, everything is in addition to the foundation, which is who I am. And that's why, Adam, this whole point, we talked a little bit about this in the green room. We do marketing for businesses and marketing for individuals, but we cannot market that which you do not know, that
Mm-hmm.
which lacks a solid foundation. So, who are you? That's the fundamental question for every single individual, every single business. And then we can get on to, okay, who are you serving? How are you serving them? What's your mission, etc. But like ultimately, who are you? Because that's what's going to differentiate you in the marketplace as well. But you have to have strong legs because when the going gets tough, what foundation are you standing on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. We've been talking about this is really interesting because the way that you said it, I have never heard of that before. So this is really interesting. Like you have to know who you are to be able to market yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
the question is then, how we gonna find out who we are?
So good. And there's two different approaches for business and individuals. They do overlap. For individuals, I call it the knowing framework, and it's 3 questions. And frankly, Adam, this is how I figured out who I was. And it's an ever growing journey. If we were to ever arrive, that makes it kind of boring. So it's an evolution in one sense. A friend of mine, he's got a community 3x freedom, and one of his three core freedoms is freedom to evolve, because
Mm.
that's actually so needed and intrinsic to human
Freedom to
nature, is
evolve.
to continue evolving and to continue growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to that point of the 3 questions, number one, it's engaging the past. Who was I? What were core moments in my childhood experience that really shaped me? What was
Mm.
handed to me? Yes, but what were experiences, often unprocessed, Adam, that I have yet to really recognize the full weight that it had in shaping me? So who was I? What were core narratives and beliefs around the world that were shaped in the past? So that's
Mm.
question number one.
Okay, so can you answer it for who you are? So you can give
Well,
us an example.
yeah. Okay. So a core moment for me in the past. Who was I? So who was I? I had a moment when I was 3 years old where I developed a belief about a part of the world, which was that I should not show negative emotion. But the way
Mm.
that I developed that narrative was I was 3 years old. I had Lyme's disease in my knee and nobody knew. I mean, it was like so early on. And I was
Do
getting
not
spanked.
show your okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do not show your
Every time I
emotion.
cried,
Mhm.
I got a spanking. And I wasn't actually with my parents. I was with somebody else. while my parents were on their anniversary trip. And so nobody knew I was sick, but I was just crying and grouchy and in pain, and nobody knew. And so I would get spanked every time I cried. And so that really solidified in me, if I show negative emotion, I'm going to not just be physically punished, but
Mm-hmm.
emotionally experience disconnection from people.
Mm-hmm.
So at 3 years old, I learned that I shouldn't show anyone if I'm upset. And so then I really did exist for the majority of my life in and under the guise of, let me just keep anything negative to myself and never show anybody a sad face, because I'll experience physical punishment, but at least emotional disconnection from
Mm-hmm.
people. And then that was reinforced later on in my life. But that's a core experience and a core narrative that shapes. It's like when you put your face up at the optometrist and you're like looking in the dials and they shift them. A moment like that, it's small. It's like the little T moments in life, little traumas that honestly, they're little traumas because they shape the lens.
Yep.
So any moment in life that shaped our lens is it either a little T moment or a big T moment for a big trauma.
Right.
Good. So that's question number one. Who was I? Question number two, who am I? So how does the past show up today in the present?
Okay.
So who was I? Who am I? And the way that it's like, okay, so now I understand that that happened in the past. How does that manifest today in the present? And sometimes, Adam, I've had people, because I'll actually do workshops with this and retreats where sometimes people have to start with that question, who am I today? And then trace the why all the way down to the root of the Genesis moment, because I actually didn't remember. I didn't know that moment at 3 had that big of an impact on me until I really realized I never
So
want to let
clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm not going back there. Just joking.
I'm never going back.
No.
It's funny because these moments today in the present, we don't understand why we're operating the way that we are. And so that's where you can start with the past or you can start with the present. Of another one for me, even the way that I was raised to think about womanhood, oh, I actually do have a narrative that I'm supposed to be smaller than the man. So now anytime that I'm in even just friendship or leadership roles with men, I have to be intentional now today to reverse that programming, which is that men are the leaders. They're the ones that are, they always have the final say. Well, what if I'm a man's boss?
Yep.
That's what am I going to do? Right. And so that's where those programs are really important to understand, because here's another thing is that in the reprogramming, it's not just, oh, I hate that happened and shaming and judging it, but it's actually, that existed for a reason that protected somebody. And maybe I even learned those behaviors to keep me safe because I did thrive in childhood. I had a great childhood. I also learned some behaviors and programs that are outdated. They're just outdated in so many ways. Yes, I know that people can go through very damaging experiences, but for me, a lot of it was old programs that are no longer useful today. And so in that process, it's, you know what? I'm so grateful for my childhood. I don't need to, kind of like we were talking about, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's no longer useful. So then what's the new target, the new program that I'm going to put in its stead? And the reality is that I do have a very strong leadership gifting. And so if I want to walk in the strength of who I was created to be in the first place, I actually need to tap into that. That doesn't mean I bulldoze people. You know what I mean? Now it's okay. Now, what does that look like in application? What does wisdom look like? So then the question is, okay, well, what are my values that are going to guide these new programs in execution? So who was I? Who am I today? And then that lends to, who do I want to be? That's the third question. And it's, what are the new targets replacing the old? And then what are the boundaries necessary? And when I think of new targets, it's like, okay, these are partially what is necessary for me to actually walk in alignment with this new program to achieve the calling that I feel like I have. And the calling might change. Maybe today my calling is to run a couple businesses. Maybe 10 years from now, it's actually going to be to raise a family. I don't have any children, but maybe at some point, hopefully. And then 10 years after that, it could be to, start a nonprofit. It's going to evolve and change, but the goal is that we've got the boundary lines to guide us forward. I think of it as like a bowling alley where you've got the targets as your pins, and then your values are the bumpers on to keep you from going so far off course. If a rocket goes off and it's just slightly 1, 2, 3 degrees, it doesn't look that bad, but it's going to go way off at some point.
Right.
So the understanding the values really keep us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so when it comes to the last question, can you give us an example on yourself, on your, like, how what you trying to, or what you want to be, actually?
Yeah.
That would be interesting, actually, to see. Yeah.
One of those, I would say one of the things that I want to be, not necessarily calling, but like who I want to be. I really want to be emotionally intelligent. And I just grew up thinking emotions were weakness, given my experience, but I thought that they were weakness. I realize now that emotions constitute 50% of us at least. We've got the left hemisphere of the brain, which is the IQ, and then the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the EQ. And so if I want to be a fully functioning human being, I need to cultivate that. And so I want to, action am I going to take? Therefore, I'm going to intentionally go to therapy. I'm going to cultivate that as a value for our business where I hire and fire based on that value. I've let team members and clients go who are not in alignment with that. And then also, I really look to cultivate that in my own life for my own self. So it's not just going to therapy, but it's like doing the internal practices that allow for me to sit with, am I taking anything from yesterday into today? The way that I lead, the way every single person leads is entirely predicated on the degree of their emotional health. Leadership is relational, and leadership requires that 50% of our brain. And it's the 50% that is the least underdeveloped. We're not taught emotional intelligence in schools, but every type of human relationship is predicated on that because we are emotional creatures, even those of us who don't like to admit it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, people, anyway, if with that, what you said, if we would go to more details to that, humans are basically emotional creatures, right? Because we are buying based on emotions, and then we are actually explaining it, or like, explaining it with logic, or like, no, what is not explaining it, but it's like when you buying based on emotions, and then you are justifying it with logic, right? And so on.
Yes.
Go. So it's very interesting and important to understand this, especially if you starting a business or so, because like we are like, if you are there, if you are starting a business just because you want money, not gonna work. Right. At some extent, it will probably, like, you're gonna be able to make money, but you don't need really lots of money to be able to live a really great and abundant life.
Yeah. So good, Adam. Well, and that's something I'd be curious about for you growing up where you did. What was your perception and approach to emotional intelligence?
For me, an emotional intelligence is, I had lots of anxiety and insecurities, even being able to show up, being in front of people, talk to other people. It was really, really difficult, but without that, you're going to you won't be able to become who you are, right? You will be the person that everybody will basically tell you who you are, instead of you telling them who you really are, right? Because everything what anybody else or everybody else says, it will be basically, you will take it so seriously, and then you won't be able to be happy in your life, even like to show what you are all about, and you won't be able to even like connect with those people, because people are coming to you because of who you are, and you can connect with them and so on, right? So this is like, it was really crucial for me to to figure this out, and um excuse my English, because like literally this is like I have never really talked about this, so I thank you for
Mm,
letting me to share this on my
yeah.
show. But literally it's really
Yeah.
interesting because I'm not really getting lots of questions on the show, so I really
Mm,
appreciate it. And yeah, like I think like people should be be okay who they are, because if you are
mhm.
not, it won't serve you, and you will be living in the struggle, and you won't be able to connect with people, and like you probably will build a business, but the business won't bring you the success that you want, because you won't be able to be just who you are, right? You will always
Mhm.
have the facade in front of, like, trying to be, and in that shape that people are telling you. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's actually something that you believe into, but like and this is big time for me. And yeah, it was really difficult for me to actually go through that barrier, and like being just able to be myself, because I had these
Mm,
type of insecurities and so on. Like, I listened to other people so many times, like, you are not good enough, and this is not what you're supposed to do, and like all my young age, it was really difficult, and especially with my English language too. It was like, holy smokes. Anyway,
yeah.
there is like another rabbit hole we can go with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really really
Yeah.
really cool. You also mentioned something. I'm gonna go back to you. You mentioned, or you are talking a lot about um, Jesus, about Christianity, and so on. Are you
Mhm.
Christian?
I love Jesus. I'm not a traditional Christian in terms of I never go to church.
Never,
I never go
never
to
been.
church.
I never go.
Um
Yeah.
I just have really experienced, man, it's like I love God and it's so personal.
Mm,
Like I feel like I've really encountered him and he's really met me when I've been the most broken.
mm,
And it's just so highly personal. And so,
yeah.
frankly, if I was to go to church, it would probably be for like, okay, let me go serve or care for people or whatever. But I feel like the church is there's a lot of damage that's been done in the name of the church. And I just see so many broken people and I want to love them, but it doesn't need to be done in the walls of the church, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. And maybe
100%.
one, I think Adam, I would love for that to be the case. I've really loved some churches that I've gone to, um, but I think I'm in a season right now, and I've been in a season for a bit where it's actually done more harm than good to say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, and I think people are like, oh well, I know all about you Christians, rather than like I actually
Yeah.
have a really personal relationship with God, and it's like it's real to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and coming from that place versus slapping a label on it. So I guess
Mm,
that's a long-winded way of saying I think technically what I believe is more so aligned with Christianity.
mm-hmm.
Um, and my sister goes to church and I'll go to church with her and
Yeah.
I really do love God. But there's just it's sad for me
Do
how
you
much church has been a
do you
source of
really
pain.
believe in God? Like, I mean, like, do you believe that there is something or someone like a God that actually like lived in this in the world, like in the past or so on, and like
Mm.
there is somebody who this whole um stories, and like the sayings and everything what is out there. Do you really believe that
Mm.
literally true?
In terms of Jesus coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I yeah, so my darling, the man I'm seeing now, he doesn't literally believe that
Yeah.
Jesus literally came. And the way that when we talk about it, I think Jesus is a representative. The story of Jesus is the representation of who we are actually supposed to be like. I think
Mm-hmm.
because I do believe that God lives in us, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe that Christ is in every single person. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have the choice, am I going to effectively live like Jesus? And what I tell him is like if Jesus really did come, that's just the best news ever. So whether you believe he literally came or not, I still think that he's the most beautiful example. And I think he did. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the best story ever.
Yeah.
Um And I just think that because of, there's this concept of Emmanuel, God with us, and that never meant so much to me as it did after my brother-in-law was killed. Of like, God knows the pain because he went through the pain, he went through loss. And if God did do that, that's the best thing ever. And even if he didn't, he's still, I do believe that he's close to the brokenhearted. But the point of, if that story is true, it's the best story that I know.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. You said also that, you mentioned a lot, that the one of the reasons why you are basically okay with the who you are basically is because like God
Mm,
already told you who you are and so on,
mm,
right? You've been
mhm,
mentioning that there, and it's really interesting that you found it in his, um, like, what is appearance? I would say like in his words,
mhm,
because like because I it happened to me the same way, right? So I'm just like
mm.
can relate to that really well. And
Yeah.
there are multiple ways like people believe or they don't believe, and so there are lots of and everybody going through their struggles different way. But I'm not really like crazy dove into Christianity yet, because I love that
Mhm,
concept. I want to go and understand it properly. But
mm,
um I grew up also in a very traditional way, like
mm.
like my parents and grandparents, they still going to church and so on. But I've
Yeah.
never really understand and have this mix of feelings, and I don't know what to really believe in that area yet, because like this is for me something
Mm,
like that I want to, because like, you know, uh, you you probably experience it too, that you have to first study about it to actually know what is it about, right? And most
yeah.
people like start judging things right from the beginning before they even do something and like
Such
study
a good
or
point,
you know
Adam. Yeah.
right. So I just wanted to like, how did that happen, like that you actually found it in in his
Mm,
presence, instead of like,
mhm,
for example, like dealing with it with more the mindset type of thing when it comes to, because the traditional going with personal development, that's like and so on, like why did it actually led you to a God and thinking like that,
mhm,
being in the presence of God and so on.
mm. Man, this is where your upbringing really does make an impact. I grew up very much so reading the Bible and having a relationship with God since
So
I was
you
a little
did
girl.
some, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so we grew up in a very Christian environment. So, like I was saying, one of the biggest impacts can be what you heard from the pulpit. Now,
Mhm.
granted, Adam, and this is, I think a lot of traditional Christians believe differently than I do here.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I grew up hearing like you're a terrible sinner and you deserve hell and you deserve nothing and it's only by the grace of God that you are alive. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I suck." And so that was my fundamental belief about myself. And so when I experienced a relationship later on in my life that reinforced that belief was already there, was
Mhm.
that I'm unlovable and it's just by God's grace that I'm
That's
even,
interesting, because like you are really beautiful woman, right? Like, and every like I don't understand how that you know
yeah.
even could came across of your mind this way, because like
Mhm.
I don't know, how old are you actually?
I'm 32.
32. You are very young. Holy smokes.
I know I'm not
So
young.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I think that in one sense it's really helpful to have many different types of avatars
Mm,
representing the same concept of we can all, regardless of what we look like, sound like, our age, have that underlying feeling of I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. And so
okay, I
it
see.
really,
So more from the inside than outside
yes,
and so on.
yeah,
Have you been always like, because like through the conversation that we have, I can see that you're really like interesting person when it comes to like how you
Mm-hmm.
present. You are really kind, really like, calm when you talk, and like you know what you're saying, or you know what you're talking about. I It's really interesting like that even something like that went through your head or been this type of struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is one of the reasons like that you had to actually work through to become this type of person, maybe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on, right? But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting. Okay, continue. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah, continue.
No, please. And please feel free to, if you have any questions, please ask. Adam, I think that even hearing you reflect that back to me, it's just a really good reminder. One, it's a good reminder of how much you can change and how much you can grow. Like I've done so much over these last 4 years. I really feel like it's been a metamorphosis. I love that concept of the caterpillar going into the cocoon. I never realized this up until probably a year ago. The caterpillar dissolves inside the cocoon. It doesn't its body is gone. Its body dies.
Yeah.
And it stinks in there. Like there is death. And Adam, it feels like that's what I went through in so many ways. I think the sweetness, I guess you could say, of my temperament has always been there since I was young. And I just have always loved people. But my inner world, the architecture of my thinking, the architecture of the root
Mm-hmm.
systems have fundamentally changed. I had to pull out a lot of weeds. There's a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, such an incredible book. And he likens your mind to a garden. And there were a lot that was sown there by
Yep.
everybody else. And it was my responsibility to go and decide, does that stay or does that come out? And what am I going to put in its place? And Adam, I think every single adult needs to do this. Ideally, you actually help your kids learn how to do that. But, our parents, God bless them with their generation, there wasn't that much access to these conversations growing up. And it was kind of a head down, just survive. They're getting married so young. Their parents were in the wars. It was survival in so many ways. And so in one sense, we've kind of elevated our own selves just by even being able to have these conversations, and what a blessing that is. And there's something, even as I say this, when you look in third world countries where they have hardly anything, they're happier than all of us. And I think it's because these mirrors, these phones, they just don't have access to the comparison
Mm-hmm.
game, and they don't have access to the petty troubles of like, oh, I don't like your outfit. Just the the
Yeah.
the very
Yep.
superficial type of
And caring
uh
about what other people think and so on, like,
yes.
people
Oh my
like, and
gosh.
everybody, it's gonna be always there. Like people's gonna be always type of like jealous or so on when it comes to what you have or how you look or what you dress or whatever, like anything like that, because this is like the human type of nature, it seems like, even because like we
Yes.
want the best of the best, right? We always want the best from the other so people can see us how great we are and so
Mhm.
on, like, and the status going up, and we know like, yeah, this is like, what I mean. So I get it, yeah. So did
There's
you
almost nothing
experience?
worse.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
One last comment, and then I'll hand it back to you. There's almost nothing worse for our mental and emotional health than the comparison of others.
Oh
Theodore
yeah.
Roosevelt said comparison is a thief of joy. It's not just the thief of joy, it's a thief of our very intrinsic worth,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so I think that that's important to comment. One of the best ways to effectively hit a reset for all those old programs is to exist in silence,
Mm-hmm.
to eliminate inputs, like put this thing away for a week or two, like really try to do that and just be alone with you. And that is one of the worst things, because you're probably not going to like what you find. You're probably going to find a lot of old laundry that you need to wash and potentially get rid
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Well, because if you even think about it, right, and like the comparison and so on, like competing, I'm really like, I love compete because like it motivates me all the
Mm,
time, like doing more and more and more, because I'm like any type of person anyway. But when it comes to business,
mm,
like I don't think that there is such a thing as a
mm.
as a competition, or
Yeah.
um what is the word I'm looking for? Yeah, probably competition. That's fine enough. Because if you have people around yourself, like who are, growing all the time and so on, and
Mm,
you find a circle around that actually like help you to do the same, right?
mhm, mm,
It's the fastest way to grow anyway,
yeah.
right? And that's why I'm thinking like most of the people who are on the internet and they are super successful, most of the time they are operating in circles,
Mm. Hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
When you
then
say
there is the
operating in circles, what do you mean by that? Like
like they're
they're not
operating
making.
operating in circles, like circles of people around
Oh,
like
yes.
people that are like they are growing together or promoting each other or helping each other to
Mm,
make more, like supporting each other with different
right.
ways. They know they figured something out that is working, they're gonna share it so they can use it, you can use
That's
it
so
also,
true.
and so on, right? But in the real world, or the way that we are programmed to believe, what we programmed to believe in, is that we have
Yes.
to compete between each other, and that's not how it works, because it's literally completely like it's destroying the world, seems to me, like, because you know you are becoming alone in the world if you do that,
Hmm. What a good point. You're becoming alone in the world. It's so true. Adam, we
right?
need community. We have to
Yeah,
have community. Gosh.
100%. And that's how like how I operate. I have so many people around me, and because of just
Mm,
this podcast, it changed all my life, completely changed
mm.
my life. Just starting the podcast, and it happened 1 year ago,
Wow.
right?
Oh, I love that, Adam. Wow.
So just being, and I saw you doing the same thing. I've been following you for a while, also like doing your interviews, having these networks and so
Yes.
on. Like this is so crucial, and people have to like the world or the entrepreneurship doesn't need to be a lonely journey,
Yeah.
right?
That just gave me chills. It does not have to be a lonely
Yeah,
journey. And
doesn't.
there's something that I actually think we take some pride in, being misunderstood and being the misfit.
Yep.
And yet we don't have to exist in that
No.
space.
No.
It's our choice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
100%. And to that point, being the misfit. Okay, what do you mean by being misfit? Pretty much every person is pretty like it's kind of misfit, right? Because
Hmm.
like everybody's different in different directions,
Yeah,
in different way, right? I'm
yeah.
different than you are, like than you, but we are still looking for the similarities to connect to each other. It's so
Right.
funny. And like
Yes.
somehow find some alignment that we can like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
want to be around this person because like it's so amazing, this person understand what I'm going through because I went through the same thing.
It's
And so on, like
so
this is,
true.
you know what I mean?
I love it. I think that it's like we are so unique, and I actually think, Adam, it's the two sides of the same coin. On one side, no one else is you. No one else
Yep.
has your brand. No one else has your purpose. You are so important to the world. On the other side, there's more that separates us that makes us different. And
Yep.
so it's all about, do I want to look at my uniqueness on this side of the coin as a cause for separation? Or do I want to look at it as a powering source to get me out of bed in the morning and give me
Yes.
purpose?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's all about, who do you want to be? So this question of, well, who am I? That's by no means the stop to the question. It's, oh, well, who am I today, and who do I want to be tomorrow? And isn't
Yeah.
that exciting? Because it's very, very empowering. We can change anything we want to, and we can be in so many ways whoever we want to.
I love it. Yes. Yes. Because like
Mhm.
everything is possible, guys. Like
Yes,
everything is
everything is
possible.
possible. I love it.
And the only
Adam, thank you
thing,
so
yeah. Go
much.
ahead. Go
Wow.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna thank you. I love this conversation, and I love what you're doing. And I love, for those of you listening, take a lesson from Adam's book. He started this podcast, and it facilitated conversations with people around the world to grow and help, yes, help you guys and encourage you guys. But I'm encouraged as a result of this. And Adam, you said that this has been so life-changing for you. So I love it. I love it. I
Thank you.
love it.
Thank you so much. I love to studying, and like studying other people's and like what they like, how they are, what they do and so on. So I really appreciate you too
Mm,
being here and having this chat with me. Um
mm.
do you off the record, do you have to go? Is it like you are on a time?
I have to go in 3 minutes.
Okay, that's why I'm asking, because like we could go over like on and on, because I have a couple of
Oh, I
questions
know.
as well.
I
Yeah,
feel that.
I'm
I
just
feel
like, don't worry,
that.
like we're gonna cut this off, get this out. So it's just like I'm just like asking you if you have to go. Okay, so cool. So I'm gonna just end it up here with three to two. Yeah, let's do three rapid fires.
Okay.
So the number one is, what's one book you think every entrepreneur should read, and why?
Mm. Entrepreneurs. Gosh, I just had 3 run through my mind. I really love, actually now 4. I'm gonna give you 3 books, and then they
Oh,
can
three.
choose based on what you need.
One is
So
enough.
The Gap and the Gain is the book I needed most. It's by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and it
Mhm,
really is about reprogramming from looking at the gap. You know, here I am
mhm.
today. Here's how far I need to go to turn around and look behind you and look how far you've come. Live in the
Interesting.
gain. Have the gain be the powering source, because then again, everything in addition to this is abundance. We're coming
Yep.
from that place of abundance while trying so hard and failing forward and doing everything we possibly can, but it's for the purpose of we're building on the foundation of so much gain. That's number one. Number two is still by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and it's 10x is better than 2x. So incredibly good. So much of the way we're making decisions is just about how can I 2x it, rather than taking a drastic decision to say no to everything, but do that one thing that's going to 10x that, that one area. The third one is called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Pappison. Love that book. It's all
Mhm.
about effectively what's the lead domino in your life, what has the biggest velocity to knock down all the other dominoes if you just did that one thing. And then the other book that I'll say, not for entrepreneurs, here's my one book. This is the one book. This is for everybody though. Letting Go by David Hawkins. That book has changed me more than most, all of them combined.
Awesome. I love it. And for those who will wait for a half year, Christine is writing her book, so you will be
Yes,
able to
going.
actually. Exactly. So
That's the
you'll
one
be,
book.
yeah. So tell just what is the title, and probably where they can find it. Do you have already like a link where they can go for on Amazon or something?
Yes, Knowing is the title of the book, and you can go to Christene Marie and sign up. I think it says that it's coming out this spring. It will probably be closer to autumn or fall, but ChristineMarie.com, you can go actually sign up to be on the wait list for the book. But it's called Knowing, and it's effectively the journey to know who you are.
Perfect. I love it. Love it. Thank you so much. I have another two, but that's gonna be for another episode. I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And for everybody who's
Thank
listening, we'll see
you.
you in the next episode.